Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 69 of the Dads and Ed podcast. We are excited that we have turned the calendar to April, and we're going to welcome Greg Kulowiec to the show here in a little bit. Greg, now we've kind of made this a tradition. The last couple of Aprils, we've had someone who will be at the Nebraska EdTech Association Spring Conference. Dean Sharesky one year, Adam Bello, kind of timed that up. Greg is one of the featured speakers at NEDA next week. And so we thought we'd bring him on and chat with him a little bit. My name is Josh Allen, Technology Integration Specialist for Lewis Central Schools. 4 wonderful kids, beautiful wife. Pleased, as always, to be joined by Catlett.
Yes, Brent Catlett here, Director of Technology here in Independence, Missouri. Beautiful wife, Josie, and 5 children ranging 10 down to 2. Excited to visit with you guys and Greg, who I have been learning from for a very long time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Devin.
Devin Schoening, Council Bluffs, Iowa, Instructional Technology Program Lead for Council Bluffs Schools. My 2 wonderful children, Grace, who is 13, and Claire is 11. My wonderful wife, Erin, who leads International Baccalaureate primary years programs here in Council Bluffs. So, yeah, same. Excited to get to talk. We have a lot to talk about tonight.
Yeah, and like Brent said, I'm kind of in the same boat with Greg. I have connected with Greg since before he was in his current role with EdTech Teacher, and glad to be able to have him join the program tonight. So if you want to connect with us and or Greg during the show, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter at Dads and Ed. You can use the hashtag Dads and Ed. I actually saw the Edu Podcast Network boss Chris Nessie using that over the weekend. Got a shot of him and 1 or 2 of his kids. I don't remember now. So use that anytime on Twitter. It's always great. Email us at gmail.com. If you missed part of the show, check out our website, dadsanded.com, which we've also, at least the last couple of weeks, been doing a better job of putting a couple blog posts on, of course, that we stole from other people, but not a big deal. Shared one of John Spencer's great posts. And Aaron Maurer, who was our guest last week, borrowed his Everything Matters post that he had created last October, which is fantastic. So if you want to read either of those, go to dadsanded.com. We're going to try and do a better job of that, both from our guests and from ourselves. So if you want to subscribe to the audio, do that in iTunes or Google Play just by searching Dads and Ed, as mentioned. And as always, we're a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Check them out at edupodcastnetwork.com. We had a great discussion a year ago about how the turning of the calendar from March to April tends to coincide with one of the greatest sports weeks ever. Last Monday, 1 week ago, as I predicted, North Carolina beat Gonzaga to win the NCAA National Championship. I would not have phrased it like that had I not won it that way, but I thought I'd go ahead and do that. Followed up by Sergio Garcia, after 19 tries, finally winning the Masters. You know, I thought I'm pretty confident. I'm not totally I'm not a know-it-all when it comes to NASCAR, but I'm pretty sure it took Dale Earnhardt about 20 tries to win the Daytona 500. So that was one of the first things I thought of when hearing how long Sergio had to wait. But any thoughts over the slate of sports? It was opening day last week.
That's right.
Didn't forget that. The Indians had a fantastic first series and then proceeded to get swept in the second series, but whatever. Get you on a high and then just kick your legs out from underneath you.
Yeah.
It was opening day down here in Kansas City today at home, and we lost 2-0 to the A's to run our record to 2-5. So we're off to a not so great start. But man, I tell you, Sergio Garcia and gosh, I just lost the guy's name. The guy he was going up against.
Dustin Rose.
Thank you, Justin Rose. I really felt like Justin Rose gave it away. Sergio is perhaps one of the greatest chokers of all time. And the putt he should have made on 18, you know, I just was like, he was missing several putts as well that certainly could have, you know, improved his score throughout the round. He missed several makeable putts. So it was Sergio's day, obviously. So not to hate on him too much. You know, good for him to win the Masters, although I got to admit, I'm not a huge Sergio fan.
Yeah, you know, I never have been really either. I heard somebody on the radio today, you know, talking about for much of his career, he was just kind of a whiny brat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that was just kind of his attitude about everything. And you know, I guess sometimes this happens when you win. People start to see the better side of you. But, you know, they were talking about how he really has changed. He's, you know, engaged now, and he's much more thoughtful about the things that he says and does. You know, I think the key was I agree that he is one of the all-time great chokers in terms of playing in major tournaments. He has been amazing in Ryder Cup and the pressure that goes along with that. But the fact that he on 13 hits the ball in the hazard, has to take a drop, ends up parring the hole, you know, where that really could have gone the other way, and then eagles 15 a couple of holes later after birdieing 14. You know, I don't know that Justin Rose, I think, necessarily lost it, but man, it was kind of cool to see Sergio, you know, finally be able to do that and turn a corner where he could have gone completely downhill. So, you know, I don't know that I was rooting for him. I was kind of hoping maybe Ricky Fowler would be able to break through in this one, but Sergio is probably one of my rooting interests, I suppose. But kind of fun to see him finish that off yesterday.
I think it's nice to have that happen to someone who it has taken so long. You know, like you said, he's not always had the most support from United States fans just because of his attitude and the perceived whininess of it. But I think all in all, I think it is, you know, to persevere for that long and finally get what is really, you know, probably the pinnacle of the golf world. You know, good for him.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll go up, you know, Kat was saying the Royals haven't necessarily started the year blazing. The Giants haven't either. They were also 2-5 or 1-5 actually, I think, and have won their last couple. But they started off the year ending just like it ended last year, with having great starting pitching, getting some timely hits, and then the bullpen just blows it. So, you know, I'm hoping that they turn the corner a bit. But I know, you know, John Spencer and I have been talking a little bit about this on Voxer. It's just brutal to watch the way they started this year.
Do you know who owns the best record in baseball going into tonight?
I'm going to guess the Indians.
Brent, you want to guess?
I'm not even going there. Who you got, Josh? Is it
Minnesota Twins?
That makes sense because they whipped up on the Royals to start the season.
Shout out to the Race to the Pennant app, by the way, for being my stat keeper. The Orioles, the Twins, and that's it. Orioles and Twins have one loss.
Yeah.
Orioles are only 4-1. I think they had a game rained out, I believe. So
I see Joey Kirkland chiming in on Twitter. The Astros fan. I don't think I know an Astros fan. You guys know any Astros fans? Got a Go Astros hashtag. I'm not sure I know an Astros fan.
You know, I'll admit I had one of the you know, the rainbow jerseys they had back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one. I mean, like the T-shirt version of it. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you where I got it from, but that is Minute Maid Park's pretty cool. I have seen Roger Clemens pitch at Minute Maid Park.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's been years ago, but obviously. So
that's pretty cool.
And Bill Little, I'm going to keep bragging, buddy, no matter how many times you send that to me. Not only did he tweet at us, he also put it in the live chat on the YouTube page. So, Bill, making sure that I know that I'm bragging. You're right, Bill. I am.
He should keep you straight there.
He's good at that.
Nice
job, super fan. All right. Anything else we need to cover with that? Tar Heels won. Not a great game. Not poorly officiated.
Oh, that was brutal.
The team played well, but the Tar Heels won. So.
It was a brutal game to watch, unfortunately, because I do think they were the two best teams. I really do think that after watching the tournament, and they were probably two best teams. Boy, a brutal game to watch.
And I would say I actually really enjoyed the tournament as a whole.
Mhm.
It's too bad that our lasting memory is of that bad game.
You know, the interesting thing about that tournament, though, is I agree. I enjoyed it too, but in a different way. Like, this one didn't have the last-second shots and the intrigue and the drama. It didn't have much of that. I mean, I think there was maybe one game, maybe that Florida-Wisconsin game that had a buzzer beater. Might have been the only one. But yeah, I thought it was a great tournament. I thought there was a lot of really good basketball. It's just that last game was not pretty.
Moving on to the dad moment of the week. I had speaking of bragging, hey, Bill, I got another one for you. I am rather old, relatively younger than you two, but still rather old. But my alumni basketball team took first place in the Louisville alumni tournament this weekend. After we went, so we do pool play, and then you get a seeding for a tournament. We got seeded 5th in the tournament because we're old, and sixth in the tournament because we're old. The 7th played younger than we were, so they got bumped down. We go 0-3 in pool play, and end up coming back and winning 3 in a row to win the entire tournament. First time we've ever won. I may hang it up on that, but the dad part of this is that my son got to come down on Saturday. And really, honestly, I'm thinking that we're staying for 2 games because that's kind of usually how it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we play one in the pool play on Saturday, and then we start the tournament. And we usually either lose the first one or maybe win one. And
right.
he's like, "You mean we're still staying?" I'm like, "Yeah, that kind of happens when you win." So it was nice to have him around, and I still have a lot of good friends that have kids the same age, so he got to shoot around with them a little bit on Saturday. So it was a fun weekend. I picked up a basketball in between, but I was not in really any physical condition. So shout out to Advil for getting me through yesterday, and only the quads are still killing me. That's about it.
That's pretty good.
Is that our unofficial or official sponsor, Josh? Advil?
That may be. Yeah, I'll work that one in. No, and I will say I'm not good. I'm not a slouch. I probably averaged about a 3-pointer a game. I don't know if I had one in every game, but I had one in most games. And then defensive guy, got a few steals, had some good assists. But we have a guy who played it'd be Division II basketball. So
yeah,
he did most of the scoring. We let him do that. All right, Devin, what do you got?
Let's see, I got a couple I think I can go with. I'll go with yesterday. We celebrated Claire's birthday, and we did a breakout EDU for her birthday. And so we locked all the presents and the cake in another room. We have this kind of sunroom off from our kitchen, and you can see through the doors. And so we locked them all so they could see all the stuff in there. And the kids they were all about 5th graders, and they had to kind of work together and solve all kinds of puzzles and locks to get in and actually get to the presents and the cake. And so it was a lot of fun. The nice thing was it was actually Claire's idea. She's seen one in a classroom before, and I've had the boxes home and messed with them. And we waited on her birthday a couple of weeks because she wasn't really sure what she wanted to do. And it was one of those things where I didn't know exactly how it was going to work out, and it worked out great. The kids had a good time, and they went outside for a little bit. When they came back in, everything was locked. I told Claire I wouldn't lock in the presents and the toys, but I did, or the presents and the cake, but I did anyways. And so it was a lot of fun to do that. So if you haven't tried that before, done it for a birthday, kind of fun for the kids.
Nice, well done, Khaled.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a hair different direction tonight with mine. I recently didn't handle myself real well as a dad, and in the realm of my disciplining of my kids, and my wife kind of called me out on it, and rightfully so. And I think my moment was about me apologizing to them, 2 of them out of the 5. And it was an interesting experience for me to kind of be humbled by my own mistakes and my own transgressions and stuff, and just been doing a lot of searching around that of late, and working on having more patience and things, and I've got 4 that are 6 and under, so it can get a little stressful around here if you don't keep them engaged. And so anyways, that's where I want to go with it, just because moments, of course, but I also kind of think it's important as dads to be real about some of the things we go through. And so I've been trying to do that on my blog as well. And so I kind of wrote a little bit more in depth about this in my most recent post on Sunday. But just, I've got a long way to go, man, and hope that I can continue to grow in the way that I raise my kids. But sometimes apologizing is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and then about the time you figure it out, then they'll get older and they'll figure out another way to make you have to apologize to them for something you say. No, it's been
sometimes like overwhelmed by just the nature of being a dad and the influence we have. We kind of sometimes, I think, can take it for granted, right? You're just in the day-to-day stuff of being a parent, and then ultimately, like if you think about when you were a kid, those moments that impacted you that from your dad or from your mom. And I'm always kind of thinking like, oh my gosh, what was that one of those moments for them that they take away for the rest of their life, that they're telling their friends and stuff. And so anyways, there's definitely work to do and improve in my world.
Right.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to have our guest here, Greg Kulowiec. I already gave away tonight's sponsor. Tonight's sponsor is Advil, the unofficial sore muscle relaxer by the 1994 to 99 alumni basketball team, national champions of the Louisville Alumni Tournament. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So first, I got to say it was interesting to catch like the back end of that conversation. I feel like I went through probably all of that stuff this afternoon just on my own. So it's good to hear other people go through the same kind of things. So yeah, like Josh said, my name is Greg Kulowiec. I'm a former high school history teacher. Live in Plymouth, Massachusetts these days. Taught at Plymouth South High School. It's a vocational technical school, and taught for about 10 years there, and then just slowly transitioned out of the history classroom and got this great opportunity to join EdTech Teacher. And I just have this really amazing, fortunate position now where I get to work with schools and teachers and districts all over the country and just help them figure out like thoughtful, creative, meaningful ways to use technology. And it's just really fun work. I get to see amazing stuff happening all over the place. I'll borrow stories from one school and share them with the next school and just do the best I can to get people kind of comfortable and thinking in positive ways about using technology.
That's awesome. Greg, last time I saw you in person, or maybe the only time I saw you, was at the Atlanta ETT Summit.
Yeah, that was a while back, yeah.
Many years back. That conference itself really influenced us and what we were doing and at the time in Bellevue, Nebraska, when I was there with our iPad Academy. And much respect for you and the work you do, and just you're well researched, and you're like you mentioned, you're collaborating with schools, and very good stuff, and just a lot of respect. So I'm excited to visit with you tonight. But with all of that said, prefaced wise, what would you say for you is the most exciting thing kind of going in education right now, ed tech stuff that you're working on?
Yeah. It's funny. It hasn't been very long, but like virtual reality is just like, I can't believe that I'm saying this, but like I'm borderline obsessed with what's going to happen with it. And I think it's super intriguing to me because I don't know if it's going to turn out right or wrong. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to it right now is, I was in the airport the other day, waiting to catch a flight home, and there was a CNN article running on one of the, the TVs. It just like blasted in the terminal. And it was like this overarching, really naive comment that was like, if you're under it was if you're under 30 or if you're in your 20s, you think VR is the greatest thing ever. And if you're over 30, you hate VR. I was like, wait a minute. Like, I think this is amazing. I think there's like tremendous potential here. Like, I think the comment is like, it's a little bit like irresponsible in a way just to make a blanket statement like that. But I think there's so much potential. And there's a group out of Stanford doing like tremendous research around it, where there's actually like scholarly research about like what is happening now on kids. And I think I'm even more drawn to it. Obviously, I'm here in this particular hangout tonight for a reason. Like, I have a 4-year-old, she'll turn 5 in May, and I have a 3-year-old. And I'm thinking, like, do I want to put these things on their head? Like, do I want them to experience this? Is this good or bad? Like, is this going to help them, or is this like really detrimental? And like, that's why I'm so drawn to it. But then I see this amazing stuff you can do with it, just like creating with technology. Like, holy cow, is it powerful? Mm-hmm. And I'm just kind of torn on it right now. I think that's why I'm so drawn to it, as, what could happen in classrooms next.
So I'd like to see, maybe go a little bit further with that. What kinds of things are you seeing, and I guess what are you thinking? As you're really starting to dig into that and thinking about what could be. What are the things that have you excited about those opportunities?
So one thing that stood out to me, and I'm going to shoot open another tab and see if I can even pull up the article. The group that I came across in doing all this research, and I'm pulling up the page right now, is the Stanford, hold on, let me pull it up. The Stanford, I want to get it right, Virtual Human Interaction Lab. And when I came across this group, I thought, oh, these are the guys that aren't just talking about it in general terms. Like, they have some meat behind what they're saying. And the one thing that stood out was that if you put a lower elementary, like younger kid in a VR headset, they actually, when they're done with the experience, they actually thought they were there. They didn't think they saw it. They didn't think they like observed it. Like, you put a kid in a I think that the scenario they gave was like a Sesame Street VR environment, and the kid walks away from it and goes, I was on Sesame Street. It's like, no, you weren't. You were looking at it. Like, no, I was there. So like, that's the thing where I'm drawn to it. And then there's more research coming out around, this idea of empathy being like the super critical skill. It's tied to design thinking. Like, step one of design thinking is like empathize with the kind of partner or the community you're working with. Yep. And now I'm seeing this push towards like virtual reality can potentially have a greater impact on developing the sense of empathy than any other medium. And that to me is like, holy cow, like, what does this mean long term? What are the implications here?
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating stuff. So Greg, like, I know when I was in Atlanta, you guys were doing, I want to say the Color app was new at that time. There was a couple others. Are there some now that are out that you're kind of looking into, or that you guys are sharing through the ETT?
Yeah, like with augmented reality, you mean, in a way?
Sure. Any of that kind of.
Yeah, it's funny, like that stuff when that was coming out with augmented reality, I think it was almost in the same space of like, what's going to happen here? And that was like 2012 or 2013, I think that event probably was. Mm-hmm. It's funny, like, I feel like augmented reality kind of like hit a roadblock because no one really developed for an education space. Yeah. Like, can you use Erasmus? Absolutely. You can try to use it, but like, build a channel and get kids to follow it. Like, you just put all these roadblocks in the way. And like, what level or success or impact do you think you're going to have when it's not made to work in a classroom? Actually, it's funny. Like, I'm really careful about what kind of technology I put in front of my own kids. Like, yes, they have shows they watch on an iPad when we're on like car trips. And like, that's kind of the extent of what they think that thing is for. They call it a hi-pad, which I think is awesome. And I want to keep that terminology around as long as I can. Yeah. But I have an Osmo kit. Have you guys ever used that before? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, I remember I met these guys back when they were called Tangible Play, when they was like in beta form. I have the first boxes. It's a Tangible Play. It came in a brown cardboard box. And I have that one. I have a couple of newer ones now. And like, my daughter's going to turn 5. And I'm like, you know what? I think she's ready to maybe see what this device is for more than like, can I watch Sing on the car ride, So I set her up with the like monster game. Have you guys seen this before?
Yeah.
And I was more interested to see what not so much the game, but like what was she gonna think and interact? And that's where I think augmented reality in some way has some pretty cool potential. And it was funny, like, have you guys ever had your kids interact with this stuff?
Yeah, well, that's cool. It's cool to hear me, Greg, you here, because I'm just thinking, even you said they're 4 and 3. Is that yeah. So that's cool for me because I have young ones. These other older guys here, Josh has young ones too, but Devin's are older. But it's interesting for me because that's really what the crux of our show is about as well, right? Being a dad in education. So now you got some guinea pigs.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have these little ones you can test. And quite honestly, I just pulled the iPads. We call them pie pads here. And we pulled the pie pads out, and I took him out of the house because I was getting tired of the kids just soaking up too much YouTube app for kids, and I felt like that's all they were doing. While I did have an Osmo kit, and because I was like testing it for work, right? And it to test for work with my kids, and then be like, okay, yeah, this is a viable product. Like I can support this in my district, and so that's always an interesting piece of this balance of what you do, because you're very into ed tech.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you handle that with your kids?
Yeah, and I honestly, like, I feel in some ways like when I'm working with a school, it's like, hey, we're K1, 2, 3 Chromebooks, and I'm thinking, like, personally, like, I don't want my daughter going to a school next year that has Chromebooks. Like, and it's just this hard, and so I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do my best to help you guys, but like morally, deep down inside, like I don't know if I would make that same decision, and it's a really hard spot to be in, because like the teachers in that school district, they don't have a say. Like their teachers, they get told you're going 1-to-1 in the first grade, and they go, okay, I better make the best of it. Like I better figure out how to make this meaningful, you know. But to go back to that other scenario too, so I set her up, and I'm sitting across the table, and I'm doing some work, and she is just like 100% focused. I'm seeing the look on her face when she's doing things that, Monster's asking, like, draw a bed for me, draw a race car, draw this or that. And she's doing it and like laser focused and like totally independent, really proud of herself. You can just see it in a kid's eyes when they're like proud of what they're doing. I was like, wow, this is great. We put it away. She was done after a little while. She's like, I want to go to the next thing. Perfect. But then the next morning it was like, Dad, I want to play Monster. It's like, okay. And then the next morning, Dad, I want to play Monster. Like the moment she got up, I was like, okay, this is a problem now. Like 3 or 4 days in, I'm like, this is not good. And I remember it's funny because I met with one of her teachers today. We just had like a little check-in conference. I mean, she's only in preschool. And I remember her telling me, once it's not that you can't rein it back once you open up that box, but it's a lot of backing up you have to do. Like you hit a fork in the road, you decided to, introduce technology to them, and you can't just take it away. You have to go back to the beginning and then almost explain to them like what it's for and why Dad's not going to let you play it this time. And it's really challenging. And that's like one of the biggest struggles I have is like you said, Brett, it's like, Dad, make my living in educational technology. I try to kind of explain how powerful and meaningful it can be, and I'm terrified of it at home. It's a tough spot to be in, but I know what the positive impact is going to be down the road for them. It's tough.
Greg, you talked a little bit about making with AR, but a lot with, and let me pause right there. So Brent talked about meeting you in Atlanta, which I was there for that. I knew you like before you were before EdTech Teacher even. I don't know if you remember this, but you had a blog post called iPad As, which talked iPad first came out, what you would use it for. I had you Skype into or whatever video conferencing thing was.
Was that like a higher ed class?
Back to a graduate level class that I was teaching, because that totally changed, how I thought about, the iPad. So Brent wants to talk about 2010 or whatever that was that we were down there. But I'm just saying, I've known you for a long time, and I've appreciated your work for a long time.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So as we have moved forward through all these years and technology has changed, I know now one of the things that I've seen you talk a lot more about is the creating with virtual reality. Talk a little bit about some of those spaces that you're excited about too.
Yeah, this is the stuff that I think is I think this could make it meaningful and transformational. I put out kind of just like a one pager, like what do I think is going to happen and where's this space going? And I'm convinced that if like there's nothing wrong with Google Expeditions, like it's awesome. There's nothing wrong with Nearpod kind of VR experiences. They're amazing. But I think if that's like the extent that this goes, then I think it's going to go away pretty quickly. At least that's like how I feel about it now. And I could be eating my words in 6 months or in 2 years or whatever it is. But what I want to see is that it becomes like a creation platform and kids are telling these stories, not just like it has to be a balance between going somewhere they've never been before and experiencing something they could never get to otherwise, which I think is pretty amazing to see that happen. But there's platforms that keep popping up. It seems like every other week or so I'll learn about a new platform where it's like, whoa, you can build with this one. It's that easy to create content. The ones that I think are doing a really good job of it right now are CoSpaces. That one I think is like, it seems like every week they come out with an update that you're like, I wish they would have this update, and then they just push it out like a week later. Have you guys built with that or experimented at all with it?
I have not.
So CoSpaces.io, what I think is pretty amazing about this is you build VR in an actual VR environment, like where most VR creation platforms, it's like take your sphere image on your phone or your like Theta camera, upload it, and then just drop some spots on it, hot spots or, whatever you're going to drop on it. But this one is like you build in a 360 environment, kind of like a Minecraft kind of thing, and you can build multiple scenes. It has this amazing layer of like Blockly integration, so you can code your characters and program your characters to interact with one another and have text pop-ups and make it as complex as you want. They just pushed out an update where you can actually upload your own sphere images and then lay the CoSpaces kind of like 3 polygon characters inside of it, so you could go in your backyard or wherever on site, get your sphere image, upload it, and then bring it to life with a whole nother layer. So that's amazing. And then you can build on an iPad, which to me is like ridiculous that you can use their drag and drop interface. So like it runs on Chromebooks, it runs on iPads, it runs on the web, like pretty awesome stuff. There's a school in just outside of Boston, Medfield Public Schools and Medfield High School. And I was running a PBL workshop there. It was like a 3-part PBL thing. And I really quickly, like in all of 30 seconds, just mentioned it, showed an example of it. And then the next time I was back, one of the teachers was like, I had my kids building like cities of the future in CoSpaces. Then they're putting their phones into headsets and like exploring what they built and then going to revise it. And like, that's amazing. And the creative potential there, I think, is like, I think that could be the platform that like really sticks, because you can build anywhere and it's so intuitive. You need 5 minutes to get a sense of how to use the tool, and then it's all about what you're trying to do with it, not how to use it. And I think that's the sign of like a really well-developed platform.
Right. Well, I'd like to maybe expand on that conversation a little bit, because of the work that you get to go and do with schools all over the country. And I know that we've had this conversation on here before about just the speed at which things change or don't change, and I'm sure you see all levels of that as you're going around. How do you see that moving forward for schools that you're working with? I know that on a micro level, again, we've talked about like things happening in our schools and a little bit of push in some places, in some classrooms, in some buildings, but that systemic change that I think lots of us have been hoping for probably a number of years now, isn't there. And how do you see that moving forward? Like, do you get caught up in that? Do you, because you're seeing some really great things happening, are you optimistic about that kind of systemic change? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm super optimistic about it because I've been able to see districts that I'll start with in like year 1 of like, okay, we're going 1-to-1, or we have a pilot. And then I've been with them like 3, 4, 5 years later. And like this one district that I just mentioned, for example, like they've been 1-to-1 for 4 or 5 years, which in some states you'd say like, oh, that's it. And then in some places you'd be like, we haven't even started the conversation yet. Right. And they're 5 years in. And this year I'm doing PBL work with them. And we are not talking about technology. And that's when it gets like really encouraging, when we don't talk about, like people come to the PBL workshop and like you can look around the room and every table has 2 or 3 different devices and no one cares.
Right.
So that's really encouraging. When it's almost like you're getting back to what teaching and learning can really look like. Is like this underlying tool that everyone uses when they know how to and when they're comfortable, and it's not a focal point. But that's 4 or 5 years in.
Right.
And then what's going to happen 4 or 5 years from now? Like, all those devices are going to turn over and the operating systems are going to be different. And like, I hate to say this, but like in some ways I'm like, go for it. Like, that's job security for me. Like,
right.
New devices, new operating systems, like, keep me busy. I'll take it. But
Right.
I'm hopeful that like things almost like unify in a way, like operating systems become so similar. Like, I just made a transition over to Android on my phone, and I thought it'd be like this massive shift, and like, it's all the same. Like, it doesn't matter. You know, you use Google in one place, like it looks a little different. The buttons are different. So I'm hoping that operating systems become in some way unified or really similar. And there's no discussion about, well, you can do one thing with this tool, but you can't do it with that tool. When all those discussions subside, then people are going to go, okay, what does good teaching and learning look like? And then it becomes things like this is why I think things like design thinking, while it's trendy now, like it does have some meat to it. And like PBL, it's popular, but it has like, there's really meaningful stuff going on there. And that's what I like that's why I'm encouraged in terms of what's happening.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hey, Greg, you're coming to the great state of Nebraska, my home state,
Yeah.
where I grew up, born and raised, very soon for NEDA.
Yeah.
And I've been a member of NEDA, served on the board of directors, have attended, I think, every year of my career, 20 plus years now.
Wow.
And so I'm biased. It's a fantastic conference. And I believe it'll be your first time there, yes?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what do you want to know about Nebraska that perhaps you don't know?
So I've been there once before. I want to say Creighton Prep is out that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I've been to Creighton Prep, and this maybe a couple of years ago, they were, had some one-to-one stuff with iPads. But yeah, the coming to NEDA kind of came out of nowhere. My admin, Gail, was like, hey, guess what? You're going to Nebraska. You're going to present at this conference. I'm like, okay, tell me when and where. Like, I'll be there. And it's funny, the original like call for proposals, or when I think it was Jackie I was talking to, and I sent her the sessions I wanted to do, and then a couple of months later I emailed, I was like, actually, can I do a VR session? Like, I'm super interested in it right now. She's like, yeah, do whatever you want, like write it up and let's make sure it looks good. So I'll be doing something on VR out there. I guess because it's outside of my region, and while I get to go work in schools all over the place, typically a school will like, they know what they're getting when they bring EdTech Teacher in, and they're asking for us. But me going out to Nebraska is like, I'm showing up on your turf in some ways. Like, what is it like out there? Like, what's the landscape of technology and one-to-one, and where as a whole are people? Because in different states, it's so different. And in different regions, it's so drastically different. So where are you guys right now as a whole?
I'll let Josh go with that, because since I'm in Missouri now, they don't own, they like to own me. But when I was there, we were doing great stuff with the iPad Academy and a lot of movement there, but not necessarily systemically across our entire district, unfortunately. But I would say overall, Nebraska is pretty proactive, and NEED is a big part of that. I mean, it's a great supportive organization that a lot of educators come to yearly, kind of, at the conference. And so I would say it's pretty progressive. That's my opinion. You guys, Devin and Josh, chime in, please.
I think progressive's a little. There's a good number of one-to-one districts. I don't necessarily know it's as much progressive as stay open, or how we can keep up with the people down the road. I think we're at the point though where it's time to figure out what we can do with these devices. And we've tried to do a better job of diversifying NEDA as far as levels of sessions offered. So I think, looking at what you're bringing, as well as some of the other speakers that we have, I think there's a little bit for everybody. So I'm excited. I don't know what time you're coming on Thursday, but we have a fantastic maker space that we set up for 4 hours. We have one of the power companies that serves the majority of the state puts $5,000 into it, and they write curriculum that goes with it, and just have a phenomenal setup that is really well attended. So I think people are hungry for it. I think for the most part, we have the devices, but it's time to move forward. Devin, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, no, I wasn't just going to add, but I think it's the same in Iowa. I mean, the districts district I work in and the schools that I work with across that I'm aware of and work with across Iowa, kind of similar. And that was the crux, I guess, of my question earlier. Is there is this idea that in Iowa, we've had schools that have been one-to-one for a long time. I mean, some of the first in the country to go one-to-one, and there's just kind of this. There gets to this point where there is some stagnation if it's always about the technology, and that's why I love hearing you talk about some design thinking and some PBL and some of these things that really don't rely on technology so much. But boy, when we use them in the right ways, we really can. We're able to make some things happen that wouldn't otherwise happen. So that's why I love Nita, and Josh and Brett and I have had the conversation a number of times about the kinds of sessions that you get at conferences all over the place, whether it's Nita or others, and how do we move that conversation beyond the individual tools and the apps and the websites to the deeper conversations that I think you've been talking about too, Greg.
I wish I could remember who wrote the blog post, and I'm just drawing a blank on it, but it was basically not a criticism. Maybe it was a criticism of look at the titles of sessions at events, and it'll tell you a lot about where the thinking is and where the mindset is, and if there's lots of nouns and devices described, maybe it's not the best environment, and if there's lots of verbs and problems and questions that are going to be addressed, that's kind of where we should be thinking how this work should be shifting. But there's a place for everything. There's a place for beginning workshops, and there's a place for tool workshops. You got to have it all, but ultimately, I got this amazing email today from a teacher at PS 96 in Harlem. I was there. Or no, wait, no, it wasn't. It was I was down in Georgia in Alpharetta. Got an email from a teacher down there. I was down there 2 weeks ago. Had them doing some creation with iPads. Showed them how to use TouchCast, and I knew it was going to be a stretch. That's a beast of an app when you're new to this world. It's overwhelming to look at it, let alone execute it. She sent me an email and she's a middle school teacher. She said she has a student in her class that basically has been non-communicating the entire year, some learning disabilities and a lot of stuff, it seems going on in that particular situation. And he's creating videos with TouchCast and teaching and explaining and opening up and talking. And she's like, I've never heard this out of him. And that's amazing. And if that's going to be the means to allow a student to share what they're thinking, that, it was just an amazing story and a true testament to how this stuff can have an impact, super positive impact on kids' lives. And that's the kind of stuff that I love to see happening, is when a student feels all of a sudden they can do something, they have a voice, they can tell their story in a way that they maybe wouldn't have been able to before.
Right.
Greg, one of the things that we ask everyone that's here as it comes on the show is kind of what this podcast is based around. That's the intersection of parenting and education. So you touched on this a little bit earlier with some of the tools that you talk or that you have your kids use and how you regulate some of that. But how has being a parent impacted your role in education and vice versa?
Yeah, it's funny. I will say in workshops that I run now, if I was running this workshop 5 years ago, it would be different. And I can't believe the impact that it's had on the role that I think technology should play, how central it is. Should it be a secondary thing that's going on in class? I've become this huge proponent of, particularly even say in an iPad classroom, and I'm hopeful that Chromebooks will shift in terms of the actual device itself. But say you're in an iPad or a Surface classroom, I've had this argument that you should have an iPad, a paper notebook, and a dry erase board. Every kid should have that, because I would say half of the work, if not more, should be done on the paper or on the dry erase board and with the device away, but then it's archived and saved and manipulated later, and all these sorts of things you can do with it. And it I don't know, I'm optimistic, and I have a bit of healthy skepticism about all of this stuff now. Like, could we do this 10 years ago? Like, nope, not going to happen. We could not have this conversation. And so this is amazing and this is transformative. And like, I'm optimistically cautious about what the impact is going to be on my kids. And I'm really worried about them living in like a virtual environment, like actually engaging in a virtual environment. Like, have you guys read Ready Player One?
No.
You have to read Ready Player One. It's going to be coming out as a film. Read the book before it comes out. Ernest Cline. And it is about the kind of hero of the story lives in a completely rundown future environment where he goes to school in a completely virtual school. Like, he could be going to school with someone on the other side of the planet and you don't know because you're going to school together. But it brings up so many implications about like, what does this mean when your schooling is virtual? The fact that like you can't be bullied anymore because you can mute the person next to you and you can say like, I can't deal with you right now. And like, that's done. You can't use foul language. You can't incite violence when you're in a virtual school. That's pretty powerful. But at the same time, you're not next to anyone. And like, that's terrifying. And the story is not about education at all, but holy cow, the implications for education are tremendous. Like, when I read it, that's all I kept thinking is like, what is going to happen? And there's places where this is kind of already happening, to my understanding, where you can basically go to like a completely virtual school or take a class in a completely virtual, not like online, not blended, like totally virtual. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's an interesting discussion. We'll see how that goes in 2044, as I
exactly
the Amazon link for Ready Player One. Well, Greg, we appreciate your time. We do have a couple other things that we need to wrap up. Do you have time to stick around, or do you need to get going?
No, I'll stick around. I have to actually show you guys something too. I feel like I could be like an honorary member. So this is, I don't know if you can see that. Hold on, I just killed my camera. Let me pull my camera back up. This is my wait, did I just kill it again? Come back on camera. There we go. Let me pull this up. There's your dad's bracelet that my kids made for me that I have to wear at all times, especially when I'm on the road.
Nice. Yeah.
Good thing when you're on the road a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
All right. Well, Devin and Brent are going to talk about a blog post, article, or book, and a video or YouTube channel. So, Greg, we'll give you a couple minutes to think about that, and you're welcome to chime in at any time there.
Awesome. Yeah, keep me towards the end of this. I'll get something queued up.
All right. All right, Devin, you're up first.
You know, the blog post I'm going to share today, I think I've mentioned here before, prior to my current position, I taught journalism for, 7-8 years before taking on this new position 7 or 8 years ago now. And so there have been some really great things. You know, I've always been a proponent of good journalism and of writing and media. There were a couple of things that happened recently. There was a high school class, journalism students in Kansas, who did some really great reporting that ended up a principal that had just been hired resigned because of the work these kids had done. And then the blog post that I'm going to share is actually from John Spencer, former guest. And he has a post recently that was called, and I'll put in, Why Journalism Might Actually Be the Class of the Future. And it talks about this idea of, a number of ideas in the post, but about digital citizenship and media literacy and creative thinking and all these things that go into journalism. And I'm such a big proponent of students doing that I wanted to share his post tonight and just share some thoughts about that. You know, one of the greatest things that I remember about being in the classroom and teaching journalism was I had kids coming in who did all kinds of really great work, and it was all different work. So whereas everybody wasn't a writer, I did have kids come in who were creating editorial cartoons that had to continue to tell a story and do amazing things. I had kids who were, creating podcasts and kids who were great at laying out and designing pages or creating graphics. And so it kind of struck me, these couple of stories recently and John's post that I'll share today about just how important I think high school journalism is in the grand scheme of education. So that's the post I'll be sharing from John Spencer.
Well done. That was a fabulous post. Former guest, John Spencer. Brent, video or YouTube channel?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a single video tonight. I just tweeted on the Dads and Ed hashtag. I came across, I think it was in my doctorate class. We had a guest speaker come, and we were talking, thankfully, about educational technology in the schools and such. And it was a director of technology at a school district down here in the Kansas City area called Olathe, which is on the Kansas side, big district, growing district. And their director brought this video. The title of it is Teaching Students Ethics and Responsibility Through the Use of Technology. And they're a EdTech director from Montclair Kimberly Academy, known as MKA, I guess, shared just kind of their philosophy that they're doing in their district around their acceptable use policy and how they create like basically I think he calls it like a driver's manual for, they have to essentially kids can take a test. They have MacBook Airs at this district and iPads, and they have to take a test in order to be given rights to be able to download things on their computers and essentially really truly own it. And they could take this test over and over again until they get 100%. And if they don't pass it, then they have to continue to take it, or they don't get those rights. And then I just thought that was very innovative in some of the practices and things that they were doing. It's a longer video, and he's a bit of a dry speaker, but the philosophy is really cool. And so I shared that out just now on my Twitter to the Dads and Ed hashtag. So anyway, it's good stuff. Kind of struck me. I showed my staff at a meeting parts of it to kind of get their take on where we're going and just kind of get them around. I agreed with the philosophy that was shared in the video, and so I was kind of take of my team, which is interesting because some of the cats on my team were like, absolutely not, Brent, it's not happening. It'll never happen because, you can't have them do it. They'll download malware or ransomware, just so it's been an interesting experience for me in this new role the last 3 years to experience the kind of very technical side of all of this fun too. And so anywho, I love to get into the whole like dreamer philosophy aspect of all of this too, and the leadership of it. And that's something I was kind of thinking about earlier in our conversation tonight about the impact that all the leadership has on all of this, and how you own it with your students, and families. So anyway, it's good stuff. Check it out if you get a minute.
Very good, and I'll retweet that on the Dads and Ed account, but it's also on the hashtag. Greg, now that we've given you a few minutes to stall, we don't always give everyone the full 2 minutes to come up with something. So, anything you have to contribute there?
Yeah, I actually just posted it as well to the Dads and Ed hashtag, just to build on the talk of VR and what this could look like. I shared the EdTech Teacher VR page that I built a couple of weeks ago and been working on, and I think maybe the most helpful thing on there, and I'll push this out as well, is the link to the just getting this pulled up, the link to the Stanford Virtual Human Interaction Lab, and I'll tweet that out again when I'm done explaining. But if you're trying to figure out what are the implications and what are the kinds of things we should be thinking about and what kind of discussion should we be having, it's just a phenomenal resource. And then a video as well, one that can just kind of open people's eyes in terms of what is possible, is the Mars school bus. Have you guys come across or seen this video?
No, I haven't.
It's from Lockheed Martin, and they outfitted a yellow school bus with monitors on every window, and the kids climb on the bus, and it starts driving, and the screens go black, and then they turn on, and they're on Mars. And the bus turns right, and they turn right on Mars, and the bus hits a bump, and they hit a bump on Mars. It's unbelievable. And this is moonshot. What could VR look like? But it gets people to almost realize hey, this is the kind of world that we could be going to, where your kid could go to Mars tomorrow if they want to. And I'll tweet that video's on the page, but I'll tweet that one out specifically to the Dads and Ed hashtag as well.
Nice.
Cool.
Well done. All right, time for everyone's favorite part of the show, the mic drop, which is on me tonight. My first tweet was December 11th, 2007. And in that nearly 10 years, by the end of the year, I have connected with a lot of people. Obviously, it's how this whole group here got started. But with all the good also comes the bad. Today there was a story on by the Associated Press that followed up from a story from a year ago. Devin Black was a librarian in New York City. Devin was one of the earlier, I never got to meet Devin, but was one of the first people that I learned from. He was one of the first people on Twitter that, as the article said, was happy to say, or not happy to say, but was willing to say that school sucked, and was willing to be the one to help that change. And what happened in 2013, he was kind of at the top of his career. He was beloved by many of us in the Twitter sphere who are educators. But what we've come to learn is that he had a rare form, a rare disease that was past depression, where he was sending money to random people overseas, and was just mixed up in a lot of things, just unbelievable. So my point to people online, or we meet people and we get frustrated with them, understand that we don't know what's always going on behind the scenes. Everyone talks about how Devin was such a great person. He absolutely was a great person, but he was fighting demons that I don't know that any of us here have ever been close to. So, he is deeply missed by a lot of us. I never got to formally meet him, although we were at a conference or two together where I got to listen to him. But that's it. That is my mic drop of the week. Not to bring us down, but important subject. So,
good job.
We are back in 2 weeks. We are actually our last live show is going to be in 2 weeks. We'll talk more about what the summer is going to look like after that. I am so excited for 2 weeks. We have Laura Gilchrist come to the show. Mm-hmm. Per tradition, as you all know, a lady come as a guest for pre-Mother's Day. Really, it's not about the viewers. It's really about us, new ideas for us to keep our wives with us for another year, because we need all the help we can get. Greg, we are very excited to see you face-to-face here in just over a week. And we look forward to welcoming you to Nebraska. Now, we took Dean Shareski, not we, Devin and Brent took Dean Shareski to have a runza. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you would like to partake in? A runza, so you're muted, by the way. A runza is a cabbage and hamburger wrapped in a bun. I do not like them, but I will go and have a hamburger if that is something that you need to have happen while you're here.
I'll think about it. I might have to check what time my flight's leaving. If I do some research, maybe my flight's leaving later. But if the research doesn't look good, I might have like a 4 o'clock I have to catch.
I see. Okay, all right, that's fine. No, we're thanks for coming on tonight. We look forward to having you here in Nebraska next week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This was fantastic. Good luck with everything. I hope maybe I can join you guys again in the future sometime too.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
right,
guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
See everyone in 2 weeks.